Look, I'll be the first to admit I've never been a particularly religious person. I read once in one of my dad's old books, something by Harold Robbins, "Religion is for women, God is for men." I can understand that. So my wife, that's Joyce, finds God in church. She keeps her purity by teaching Sunday school, singing in the choir, helping out with church activities, and making food for church events. I'm fine with all of that too. Maybe I can find God sitting on a tree stump in the middle of the woods while the dog chases a rabbit, or by watching the sun rise on a hillside after a night of working on the farm. I mean, God speaks to people in different ways. So I don't go to church every Sunday. I still go more often than those who only go on Christmas and Easter. And when the kids were little, I never missed a Sunday. So what does this have to do with unfaithfulness? Actually, a lot. But let's get some things cleared up first. My wife Joyce is 38. I'm 40, well, almost 41. It's the usual story. Small town, high school sweethearts, me off to college, graduate, come back as a high school shop teacher, carpentry, building one custom house every summer for someone in town. Joyce was hired right out of high school, secretary at a local law firm. No, this isn't about some shady lawyer. We got married, had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. We joined her church and started our happily ever after. Joyce was a virgin on our wedding night. At least she said she was, and I believed her. I might as well have been one too, you ask me. A quick hug in the car doesn't really count. Joyce is an attractive woman. Until recently, I thought she was pretty smart. 5'6", regular features, nice legs, no excess weight. She's not stunning. I would say she's pretty. She's gained a few pounds over the years and developed a bit of a tummy, but that's expected after having 3 kids. It never bothered me, not until lately. She has brown hair, which sometimes she lets grow out and other times she cuts it short. She also has brown eyes, high cheekbones, and really nice lips and teeth. She takes good care of her teeth to keep them looking white. Overall, she's a mix of different features. As for me, I'm a young Robert Redford, or at least I wish. No, I'm just 5'11", brown eyes, brown hair that's starting to gray. I haven't dyed it, and I'm a bit overweight. My name is Harry McDermott, and for some reason, they call me Dirty Harry. I'm not fat, but I'm not as slim as I used to be. I'm muscular, but that's because of my job. I've never been in a fight or experienced any major altercations. I did serve in the National Guard, but I never saw any combat. Joyce and I both wear glasses, although she sometimes switches to contacts. I stick with the wire-rimmed glasses, and I don't need bifocals, at least not yet. Now, how did I find out about the infidelity? How did it develop, and what have I done about it? As I mentioned earlier, Joyce loves our church. She loves to sing, which means she has choir practices usually on Wednesday nights and a short practice before church on Sundays. She also helps out in the church kitchen for dinners and events. On top of that, she's involved in Sunday school, occasional seminars, and trips to historic sites. She's also a part of the worship committee, which involves arranging the decorations and occasionally baking a cake or pie for someone who is sick or in the hospital. And no, the person involved in the adultery is not the pastor. So Joyce is quite active in the church, but she keeps everything organized on the kitchen calendar, so neither the kids nor I have any surprises. In addition, Joyce is as reliable as a clock. She's up early in the morning, getting lunches ready, preparing school bags, and making sure everyone is ready to leave on time. She's home before the kids, and dinner is usually ready by the time I get home. She's really organized, and nothing gets in the way of her plans. Ah well, that's where her downfall starts. Oops, I forgot to mention. Joyce is more than just a churchgoer and an organized homemaker. She's also the family enforcer. We have 2 boys, Chad and Harry Jr., who both have cars, as well as a Jeep. Our daughter Claire is too young to drive. She's only 15, but she gets rides from her friends. Joyce likes to keep tabs on where the kids are and what they're doing, so everyone in the family has a smartphone. If anyone is not available, they are in for some trouble. I also have to be available. Here's the problem: for us to be available, Joyce has to be available as well. She needs to be ready to answer calls or messages at a moment's notice. So everyone's schedule is displayed on the kitchen wall. We all have cell phones. We all, except Claire, have cars, and we're all expected to be close by, or at least reachable. By now, you can probably see where this is going. Good old Joyce, my ever-loving, loyal wife and soulmate, was destined to get caught in her own trap. So when did I first suspect something? I got my first hint one night when we were getting ready for bed. Joyce had finished all her tasks, solved all the family issues, and was in the bedroom with me when I caught a whiff of something strange. I'm not someone who wears cologne often. Sure, I might put on a bit of Old Spice once in a while, but most of the time, it's just soap and water. That doesn't mean I don't know what certain smells are associated with. Joyce has bosses, and there are plenty of men in our community who wear cologne. There's this guy at the high school where I work who always smells like lavender. Lavender? On a man? I had to ask him what he was wearing. He said it was some fancy brand like Gaudier or Gaudier, and it costs around $70. 00 a bottle. I didn't recognize the name, but I definitely recognized the smell. It was a mix of mint and lavender. Lavender is usually associated with women, and mint is something you eat after a meal. It wasn't a scent I would forget easily. So why did Joyce smell like a male model drenched in that fragrance? I didn't say anything. I didn't really think about it at the time. I mentioned earlier that I'm not much of a churchgoer, but that doesn't mean I never go. So one Sunday morning, I happened to be at the church for the early service, and I noticed a new guy in the choir. Who was he? After the service, while Joyce was preparing for her Sunday school class, I snuck into the choir room. There it was, the unmistakable smell of lavender, and yes, you guessed it, it was coming from this new guy. I couldn't help but think of the line from the old Eagles song, "She's got a lot of pretty boys she calls friends." I love the Eagles. I walked over and introduced myself. "Hi, I'm Harry McDermott, Joyce's husband." "I didn't catch your name." Joyce appeared next to me. "Harry, this is Kevin Melrose. He and his wife are new members. They just transferred here from." She looked at Kevin. "Richmond, right?" Kevin smiled at my wife and then at me. "Yes, Richmond. My company transferred me here a few months ago. We visited the church and really liked it." I shook his hand, smiled back, and said, "That's nice. Where's your wife?" He continued smiling. "Oh, she'll be coming to the late service. You know, kids and all." I smiled back. "Kids, yeah, I understand." I turned to Joyce. "See you after church." She leaned up and gave me a peck on the cheek. I wasn't used to public displays of affection from Joyce, especially not in front of someone she'd just met. I watched her smile at Kevin, but I didn't think much of it at that moment. On the way home, it hit me. That smile and that hug weren't meant for me. She was sending a message to Mr. Kevin Melrose. Now, I wasn't sure what that message was exactly, but the cologne he wore and the way Joyce acted around him made me suspicious. How did she get close enough to him to bring that scent home? What was going on? What was really going on? Probably nothing, but maybe it was time for Harry the Sleuth to start investigating. It should be easy. I knew exactly what Joyce was supposed to be doing every minute of every day. Joyce had a newer car, an Avalon, and it had a fancy GPS system. I could track her wherever she went. I had used it before when she said she had car trouble but couldn't explain where she was exactly. An Avalon, she should have been driving a Chevy. So I decided to keep an eye on her movements. Over the next couple weeks, I made spot checks, usually when she was involved in church activities. It was mostly easy to rule out joint trips with the pastor since he was in his 60s, and Sunday mornings were also ruled out. But what about the other times? What about Saturday afternoons? Joyce was in charge of the worship committee, and Saturdays were when she had to go to the church to make sure the altar flowers were arranged properly. It made sense since the flowers were often a memorial, and people wanted them to look perfect. That was part of Joyce's responsibility. Also, I made an effort to attend church every Sunday. I'm not dumb, and until then, I didn't think Joyce was either. As for the guy Kevin, well, let's just say he wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. Come on, if somebody's up to something, they wouldn't want to broadcast it, and certainly they wouldn't want to broadcast something like a secret meeting in a church. I watched Joyce, Joyce watched me, and Kevin watched Joyce. That wasn't all. Kevin had a wife, and she was watching too. Better, or maybe worse, the later service was mainly attended by older people. These were people my recently deceased mother's age. They included Joyce's mom, dad, and half-dozen aunts and uncles, not to mention friends of the family. They were all keeping an eye on us. After 3 weeks, it was becoming surreal. Joyce had to find out, why was I going to church all the time, and to the late service? What did she think the elderly folks were seeing and talking about? I bet the old landlines were buzzing after Sunday services. Still, my checks on her GPS weren't telling me anything. Every time I checked, she was exactly where she was supposed to be. I guess I could have called, but that wouldn't have been me. No, I had to come up with something else. The something else fell right in my lap. We were all at dinner one night when my younger son Chad asked his mom, "Hey, who drives the midnight blue Dodge Viper I saw on the church lot Saturday?" Joyce looked up, and I could tell she was surprised. She said, "Gee, I don't know. Never noticed. What kind of car is that?" Harry Jr. chimed in, "A Viper, a Dodge, and it ain't cheap." I know that. I had her. I glanced at my wife non-committally. "Doesn't that new fellow? What's his name? Kevin Maloney. Doesn't he drive a Dodge?" I deliberately got his last name wrong just to see what Joyce would say. She didn't take the bait, smart girl. She seemed to be clutching her fork when she said, I don't know what Kevin drives. I'll check this Sunday." I looked at Chad. "You said you saw it on the church lot when?" "Saturday?" "Yeah, Dad, it was Saturday." "What time Saturday?" I asked. Chad replied, "Maybe 4 o'clock. I looked at Joyce. "You do the flowers about that time, don't you?" She let go of her fork and picked up her iced tea. "Yes, but I've never seen him." It might have been somebody else. It could have been anybody, maybe one of the locals who live not far from there. I thought, this was good. Harry Jr. said, "A local with a Dodge Viper? You're kidding." Joyce got up. "Anybody for dessert?" I stopped off at the Walmart and bought a coffee cake. I went with the flow. "Sure, I'll take a piece." One by one our kids got up and left the table. I wondered if it was Saturday afternoons, was that when they'd been meeting? I thought, if they'd been meeting on Saturdays, I'd check. Man, people are foolish. My wife's foolish. I made a point to drive by the church late the very next Saturday afternoon. There they were, one pale metallic gray Avalon and one midnight blue Dodge Viper. I've read stories where the husband catches his wife, but decides not to do anything until he's collected enough proof. That's not me. If they were in the church up to something, I'm not the type to wait around. I pulled into the church lot, got out of my truck, and walked straight up to the side door. Our church is an older one. It was first built in 1840. During the 1950s, 2 annexes were built on, so the church is shaped like a T, with the main church in the center, a northern annex and a southern annex. The comfort room is in the southern annex. It has thick chairs and a couple of cozy older sofas. The comfort room is used mostly for people getting ready for a wedding or maybe members of a grieving family before a funeral. My groomsmen and I had used that room on our wedding day. I wondered as I crossed the lot to the side door if that was the room where our marriage might be at stake. I reached the side door, tried it, and found it was unlocked. That made no sense. If I was Joyce and up to no good, I certainly wouldn't want to be interrupted. I pulled open the door. The damn thing was stuck. It made a loud noise. So much for any big surprises. I started up the small set of steps, just 3 steps. At the top, I made the turn that led to the comfort room. I could see the door was closed, but I could hear the faint sounds of people talking. I pushed open the door. There stood my wife. It looked like she'd just stepped away from the man there with her. Yes, it was Kevin Melrose. One look at my wife told it all. Her hair was down and tousled. She'd been letting it grow out since the beginning of summer, but this was nothing like the tight bun she normally kept it in. I could see her jacket lying across the top of one of the sofas. It was enough evidence for me. Joyce saw me. She started to blush. She'd been standing beside Melrose. She stepped back and away. Darn it. Gosh darn it. I'd caught her. I was furious, but held it in. What else was there to do? Punch the jerk? Yell? Curse? Cry? I wanted to do it all but didn't. I stood there like a fool, shocked. I couldn't think of anything smart to say or do. No, nothing to say, nothing to do, nothing, just nothing. Joyce didn't follow right away. My guess was she wanted to compose herself. I was back in the parking lot before I heard the church door reopen. I was already getting in my truck when I heard her say, "Harry, wait." I closed my truck door. I nervously put the key in the ignition and turned it on. My windows were up, but I could hear her. She was calling my name. She looked devastated. A little late for that, I thought. I put the truck in gear and backed out of my space. She had reached the truck just as I shifted into first. I slowly pulled away. For a few seconds she tried to keep up, but I couldn't handle it. I couldn't bear it. I had to get out of there. As I pulled onto the street that would lead me home, what a joke. My mind started to wander. This was Joyce, right? Joyce, the focused, hardworking, efficient, loyal, faithful, ever-loving wife, perfect mother, pillar of the church. What a lie. She was going to call. I knew she'd call. The cell phone was her weapon, the tool she used to control everyone in line. I figured I had a few seconds before she did. I took those seconds to think, to reflect. There were the pregnancies, 3 babies, the childbirth classes, belly rubs, ultrasounds, feedings, the colicky nights, the high fevers. There were the baptisms, the birthdays, the plans, the commitments. Chad had asthma, trips to the hospital, the emergency rooms, the hospital chapels, the prayers, begging God, and the commitments, always the commitments. There were school issues, Claire in middle school, the bullying, Joyce's protective instincts, fighting for her daughter, our daughter. My daughter was she. Both her parents were alive. Her dad had suffered a stroke. God, that was tough. We were there, though. I was there. My dad and mom both died, one right after the other. She was there, right there with me, supporting me, keeping me going. Where was she now? Goodness, 19 Christmases picking out the trees. Always lived trees with the big root ball. They'd all survived, too. They lined the driveway up to our house. Our house that was a joke, a lie. We'd found an old farmhouse, just 20 acres with a rundown old house, leaky roof, creaky stairs. We'd laughed because it was like the house in that old movie, It's a Wonderful Life. We'd turned that old house into a home, a warm, loving home filled with happiness and memories. All gone now. The backyard, her first cat, 2 of my dogs, all buried back there. How she cried when Pumpkin, her red tabby, died. The darn cat was over 20 years old. She'd had it since she was a kid. Nice cat, purred all the time. I remembered. I'd felt bad too. Our house, it was in both our names. Too bad now, I guess. Our kids, the youngest, Claire, was just 15. Okay, so Joyce was cheating. I didn't care about the cost. I'd have to put up and pay up for 3 years. Just 3 years, that's all. Darn it, so what? I couldn't stay married to a cheat. We made promises. Gosh darn. Gosh darn her. And gosh darn him too. He's got a wife and kids. Oh yeah, they'll find out. You could take that to the bank. My cell phone rang. I looked it over. It was Joyce. I picked it up, flicked it out. I said, Joyce, where are you, still on the lot? She replied, I am. I'm leaving now. I finished, okay, see you soon. It would be soon too. She asked, where are you going? I replied, I'm going home. Don't you want to wait and talk? No, I said, you can stay there with Mr. Melrose. I'm headed home. I added, try not to stay out too late. She responded, what's that supposed to mean? I heard her sniffle. I said, you figure it out. I think we both hung up about the same time. I didn't want to go home. Maybe if I just kept driving? I did drive home. The kids would be there. So I'd found out she'd been cheating, and I'd found out who with. Now I had to decide what to do. That was a no-brainer. I couldn't stay married. So I was 40, almost 41. I had my health, I had a career, I had skills. I could farm. I could build things. I just couldn't keep a family. Shoot, was it my fault? Had I done something? Had I let her down? If I had, what was it? Did it matter? When I got home, the kids were waiting. They all looked scared. I guess Joyce had already called. Claire came up to me, Mom's on her way home. She said for you to wait. I smiled at my little girl, really. Did she say anything else? No, only that you should wait till she got home. I looked at my boys, tell your mother when she gets in, I've gone upstairs to take a shower. I wasn't really that dirty. I'd done a little firewood earlier. I'd sharpened some blades and lubricated the wood splitter. We had a good supply for the winter, but there was some mulberry and maple I thought I'd cut up and split before it got too cold. Sure, maple's a trash tree, but it's a deciduous and burned, just not quite as hot. I even burned pine. If it was well seasoned and dry, it was fine. Besides, our chimney is a good one. I should know I built it tightly sealed ceramic tiles, the best concrete, braced in cinder block, thoroughly parged and then painted. I cleaned it every spring. Couldn't have the house burning down now, could we? Didn't matter now, no, I guess not. I needed a shower because I just felt dirty. I was just getting out of the shower when Joyce walked in. She looked at me all wrapped up in a towel and the big bathrobe she'd bought me last Christmas. She said, wait for me. Don't get dressed or go downstairs. I want to take a shower too. I started drying my hair. Yeah, be sure to get all the dirt out from between your legs. She looked stricken. Harry, don't. I grinned ruefully. Joyce, don't. She turned and walked in the bathroom. I continued drying. I'd more or less made up my mind. The kids were old enough. I didn't need to get proof. I had all the proof I wanted. This was going to be a slam dunk. I got dressed and went downstairs. Darn it, I wasn't pulling any punches. The kids were sitting around the kitchen table. We had one of those big country kitchens. I designed and built it the way Joyce wanted it. I didn't get it. Why'd she do this? What was I supposed to do? I got to the kitchen and scanned the kids. They looked scared. Well, time's up, kids, your mom and I are splitting up. Claire gave it about 10 seconds before she started crying, oh daddy. Jesus, it was right out of It's a Wonderful Life. Chad was next. Why? I don't believe it. Harry Jr. was the most cognizant. What'd she do, Dad? I looked at the three of them. There seems to be another man. I didn't get any more out. Claire ran from the room. Harry followed after her. He exclaimed, I'll get her and bring her back. Chad looked dumbstruck. You are kidding? Mom? This is some sick joke, right? I looked right at him. Sorry, I caught her just a few minutes ago. We lost eye contact, then I found out why. From behind I heard her, Harry, you didn't. I turned around and saw her. She was looking at Chad. She looked at me. I thought for a second she was going to faint, then thought better of it. Not Joyce, not her. She went over to the table and sat down. Still looking at me, she said, you couldn't wait. You had to say something to the children. That really hit me. No denial, no attempt to lie, no remorse, nothing, just a you couldn't wait. I told her, we need to get this over with. Joyce turned completely white. No. No. You don't mean. You can't. It's not. It wasn't. I interrupted her. Wasn't what? Looked like it to me. Gosh, Joyce, I've suspected for weeks him and his cologne. You think I'm stupid? By then Harry Jr. had found Claire and with his arm around her was helping her back in. He asked, cologne? Guy? What guy? I looked at my oldest son, my firstborn. For a fleeting second I wondered, was he mine? I said, the new man at church. I looked at Joyce. Kevin Melrose, isn't that his name? She looked at our kids, then back at me, but not in the eye. Yes, please. Let me explain. I looked our kids over. They were in worse shape than either of their parents. You kids go in the living room. I'll call you when we're through. Harry Jr. got up and started to herd his younger siblings into the living room. I slipped into a seat across from my wife. My mouth was so dry I wanted to get something to drink, but I was determined not to show any sign of weakness. I looked at her. Gosh, I wanted to strangle her. I felt myself involuntarily shaking. Tears were rolling down my cheeks, but I couldn't stop. She looked so forlorn. I wanted to hug her and comfort her. I hated her. I loved her. I wanted to cry out. I wanted to yell. I wanted to cuss and holler and break everything in the house. I needed to take a pee. I never felt so helpless, so feeble. My insides were twisted in a million knots. I felt the bile rise up from my stomach. I tried hard and managed to swallow it back. I felt cold, but I was sweating. Joyce looked worse. After what seemed like an eternity but was only a few seconds, I said, well. She opened her mouth to start to talk, but nothing seemed to come out. She said, Harry, I don't feel so good. She started wavering in her chair. I hollered back to the living room, Junior, Chad. Get in here. They must have been right at the portal. They were in almost instantly. I looked at Harry Jr. I don't know. I was feeling funky myself. I kept gasping for breath. I looked back at Joyce, then again at Junior. He was already at his mother's side. Chad, he exclaimed, go start your car. He had his arm around his mother. Come on, Mom. He looked at me. I don't know what's wrong. I'm taking her to the hospital. You don't look so good either. Maybe you should go too? I felt bad, but not as bad as Joyce looked. No, you go ahead. I'll stay here with Claire. He already had his mother wrapped in a coat and was half carrying and walking her out the door. I spun around and threw up all over the floor. There wasn't anything in there, just bile. I fell to my hands and knees and just kept throwing up, dry heaves. Over my shoulder I saw Claire. Call your grandmother and tell her to get to the hospital. Don't worry about me. I'll be all right. Claire ran to her purse to get her cell phone. I stayed on my hands and knees until I stopped heaving. Then while I was recovering, my cell phone rang. It was Chad. He'd gone with Junior. Dad, Mom's doing better. Looks like she just hyperventilated, but we're still taking her to the hospital. She still doesn't look good. I replied, good, stay with your mother. I managed to get myself back together. I even got a drink of tap water. Claire was a mess, I told her. Claire, honey, just hang out in the living room for a while. Just till we sort this out. She started crying again. Dad, I don't want you and Mom to. Please, Dad. Can't you? You know? Oh my gosh, Dad, what'd she? What could I say? My little girl, my angel, I said. We'll see. That seemed to quiet her down. I guess I shouldn't have said anything to the kids without clearing everything with Joyce first. It was too much for everybody. That thought stuck in my throat. Clear it with Joyce? How stupid. It didn't change anything. If anything, it made me more determined. Junior, Chad, and Joyce weren't gone all that long. Chad came back in first. We got to the emergency room, but the place was so crowded Mom said we should just come back. She was a lot better by then anyway. It was just hyperventilation. The back door reopened, and in walked Joyce's mom. I saw everybody coming out of the emergency room, thought I'd follow and see if I could help. Junior was helping his mother back in a chair. Joyce was still kind of weepy. She glanced over but didn't look her mother in the eye. She said, "Hi, Mom." Then she looked at me. "Can we talk tomorrow? I need to get some rest." This was Saturday. We or she had church in the morning. The thought triggered the anger in me all over again. I said, "Oh yeah, tomorrow's Sunday church. Don't you have a solo or something?" Her solo was actually part of the offertory. She had a short piece. She'd be singing a verse or two of Amazing Grace while a couple others would be doing El Shaddai. One of the other singers I suspected would be Melrose. How appropriate, I thought. Joyce started sniffling again. "I can't go to church. Not now." I wasn't having it. "Oh yes, you can. You're going to church. You're singing in the choir. You're singing your little piece, and I expect you to be just as expressive as you always are." Joyce had a habit of overdoing it when she was singing or reading before the congregation. Yeah, I forgot. Our little Miss Joyce was a regular ham when it came to church. A real showman little Joyce was. She'd been that way since she was a child. The old folks and the children loved her. I wondered how much love there'd be after they found out why we split up, what with poor little Joyce being given the air by her backsliding slacker husband Harry. I could almost hear the excuses, but gosh, Mr. McDermott, it was only betrayal. I mean, like what, it's only 7th on the things not to do list. It wasn't like it was number 1. Can't you find it in your heart too? You know? No, I wouldn't find it in my heart. Not me. Not good old loyal, faithful, dummy me. I wasn't Jesus. No, sir. I'd have that first stone ready and waiting. Joyce whined. "Harry, no please. I just can't, not now." The kids were watching. Their grandmom was watching. I quietly said, "You can and you will. You will sing. You will smile. You will sway your hips. You will praise the Lord. But the 4 of us," I waved my right arm about to include the kids, "we won't be there. You can stand in front of the whole congregation and look at the empty pew where we used to sit. It'll remind you of what you threw away." Joyce looked from Claire, to Chad, to Junior, to her mom, and then to me. "This isn't." I interrupted her. "What? Fair?" Balderdash, I pointed to the stairs. "Go to bed." She gave up. Shoulders slumped in defeat, Joyce trudged up the steps. About halfway up, she turned and looked at me. "Are you coming up?" I smirked. "It's my bed too, wouldn't miss it for the world." After a quick glimpse at her mom, groping the banister, she climbed the last few steps, turned and went off to bed. It was like watching someone stagger down the last mile on death row. I loved and hated every second of it. Once she was out of sight, Chad turned to me. She told us what she did. She admitted she'd been a little out of hand, but she said, other than a little hugging and inappropriate touching, nothing happened. I listened. Chad and Junior acted like they wanted to believe it. I wished I could too, but I knew I couldn't. It was more, a lot more, than just a grope and a hug. Besides, what difference did it make? In for a penny, in for a pound. If nothing serious had happened, it was most likely because they hadn't worked up to it yet. I looked at Junior. He seemed the most determined. I said, "What does the Bible say? To have a strong desire for someone in your heart is the same as doing it." I remembered I'd heard my dad tell me President Carter said that once. "Junior, you can look at me all you want, but she's already done it, just not officially yet. I'm sorry." Junior dropped his eyes. "I get it, but it's Mom, Dad." I finished his sentence, "But it's Dad's son." Claire was weeping again. Junior just hung his head. Chad whispered, "Let her stay home tomorrow, us kids will go. You and Mom stay and talk it out." He looked from me to Claire, to Grandmom, to Junior, then back at me. "We'll abide by whatever you decide." Claire beseeched her grandmother, Grandmom. Grandmom held her arms at her sides. "This is your father's call. Thank goodness, I thought. Then I looked at my kids. I could see any resistance had been crushed. I said, all right. And that was that. I looked at the clock on the kitchen wall, a clock with kittens on it Joyce wanted, and I'd bought from a catalog right about the time we knew Pumpkin was dying. Everywhere I looked, I saw memories, mementos of something she destroyed. It broke my heart. What a jerk, what a foolish woman. I reached out and took Claire's hand. You guys go to church. Mom and Dad will stay and talk things over. And Claire, like I said earlier, we'll see. Claire didn't say anything. She pressed herself against me. I said, all right, all of you upstairs. I'll stay here. I need some time. The kids looked at each other and at me. I exclaimed, go on, get going. That got them moving. My mind was still made up. I'd give Joyce a chance. There was still Grandmom. I said, I guess you want an explanation. She sighed. There've been rumors. You don't need to tell me anything. Remember, her dad and I are here for our daughter and for you. We trust you. It might hurt, but we know you'll do the right thing. That gave me an idea, I said. Thanks, Mom. Can I call you tomorrow? She came over and hugged me. Of course, then she turned and left. After a few minutes, I went upstairs to the bedroom and my one-time wife. I wasn't going to surrender my right to my side of the bed. I went upstairs, took yet another shower. I still felt dirty, dried off. Something I seldom wore in bed, lay down, and curled my head in my pillow. It didn't take her long. Within minutes of my lying down, I felt her head on my shoulder. Her right hand was around my waist. Harry, she whispered. I unwrapped myself from my pillow. What? I'm sorry. Well, I responded, yeah, me too. I rolled back over. Joyce wasn't having it. She slid over as close as she could get. She pulled and tugged till she got me on my back. I let her. She rested her head on my chest. The next morning, Joyce and I both helped the kids get ready for church. We played it light like it was no big deal. It was a big deal, though. Joyce pretended she should go, but I know she felt differently. She kept saying I should go. I have my Sunday school. I'm helping with communion this morning. There's my song. I hope they can. No, I scolded. The church can get by one Sunday without you. She faked a grimace, but I knew she was relieved. The kids got off, and the two of us sat down at the table. I started, well, you have something to say. Things seemed clearer, more lucid in the light of the morning sun. I recalled how I read most scholars believed the end of the world wouldn't come at night, it would come at dawn. Well, I thought, here we were. Joyce started, first I want to say I'm sorry, but the truth is, nothing really happened. She paused like she was waiting for me to say something. I did, something was happening. Something did happen. Though I knew our marriage was over, I never felt so calm. Joyce added, I don't know where to begin. Tell me what I'm supposed to say. You could tell me how it started, maybe a little bit of the why. I'd like to know why. She coughed, then she got up and got a glass of water. She was visibly nervous. She should be. She looked exhausted too. I knew she hadn't slept well. Sitting back down, she gulped and then went into her story. Harry, I don't know exactly how it began. Kevin's such a nice man. He's bigger than you. She paused. No, I don't mean that way. I don't even know about that. I mean, he's taller, broader shoulders. He's very handsome, not that his appearance means anything. He has big hands. He's always so earnest. He's got such a warm smile, a sweet, genuine personality. His hands are, well, they cover my whole hand when he lays them on mine. His hands are soft, his fingers so smooth. He's a kind person. Everybody likes him. I thought about my hands, they're calloused. I've had several broken fingers. It goes with the job. I didn't say anything, though. I just listened. Harry, he's a caring person. He's gentle, and he's so sincere. Oh, you're gentle too sometimes, but he's like that all the time. When you talk, you're gruff. His voice, it's melodious, soothing. His every word is like a song. He says things, nice things, but he's interesting. He tells me stories about the places he's been. He tells me I'm pretty. He says how young I look. He likes my hair. He says my eyes tell him things, like I'm young and pretty. He said I had a mischievous nature. She seemed to smile inwardly at that, like it was some private joke. He's a good, kind man, Harry. What nonsense, I thought, but I kept quiet. She seemed to draw strength from my silence. Harry, you're a wonderful person. You're strong, you're responsible. You handle things. You work hard. You're always on the go. You fix things. You do things around the house. But it's always just things. It's never about me. I interrupted. Yeah, I know. I'm not warm and kind. I'm rough, and I make mistakes. I admit it. I'm guilty. I forget to put the cap on the toothpaste. I leave marks when I use the bathroom. I leave the toilet seat up. I don't fold my towels. I leave cupboards open. I leave the silverware drawer open and spill jelly in it when I make a sandwich. I don't listen. I track mud in the house. She interrupted me. No, it's not like that. It's that, well, he paid attention to me. He gave me compliments. He helped me with my coat after church. He made me feel special, important. You weren't even there. I stopped her. It is inappropriate. It's not right. Jesus, Joyce, have you ever seen him at home? He has a wife and 2 kids. No, I guess you've never thought about it. But he goes to the bathroom and wipes himself just like the rest of us. You said I care about things. Well, I do. We have 3 things at church right now. You really messed up those things now, didn't you? She kept looking around the room. I realized she was really lost. Tell me, how did this start? What did you 2 talk about? You mean in the beginning? Yeah, the very beginning. She hesitated. Then, well, at first we talked about his old church. He was involved. He sang in the choir, taught Sunday school, volunteered at a soup kitchen, and he played on the church softball team. Sounds like a devoted church member, an important person in the community. Oh yes, I think you'd like him. Tell me, Joyce, is that all you 2 talked about? No, we talked about normal things, our kids, his kids, my job, what his wife does, his job, what you do, how hard you work. What did he say about me? Gosh, he said he really admired you. He said he really admired you. He said he couldn't even fix a light bulb without help, and you build entire houses. Anything else? He said he respected how hard you worked, all the time you put in, how he bet you were really tired when you got home. He said he bet I was proud of you because you work so much. You like that. Sure, he was right, you do work hard. You provide for us. He said you were a good provider. Any complaints? Joyce paused. Well, I did say I wished you were around the house more, that sometimes I wished you. He had something to say about that, didn't he? He did. He said you were like the shoemaker and the shoemaker's children. You were so busy working and helping others that I cut in, that sometimes you feel left out, overlooked. No, he didn't say that, but he did say he bet I was lonely sometimes, you agreed. Yes, I did. It's true. You're gone a lot. Sometimes I need you and you're not around. And he was really understanding, wasn't he? Oh yes, he understood. He said he would never do that, and if I was his, he'd never. I'd heard quite enough. It sounded like Kevin Melrose knew what he was doing. It looked like Joyce was thinking the same thing. Tell me, how did it come to what I saw yesterday? She blushed. She'd been fidgeting already, now it got worse. I don't know what you mean. I was proud at how calm I was. While she talked, I'd been thinking about some troubling things. It occurred to me that in many ways Joyce was still the high school girl I married. I thought, where was her armor? She went from home and high school straight to work in a small law firm. Her bosses were older, kind, paternalistic, and in their way protective. We were already very serious even in high school. It had always been just me. She never dated. I came back from college, we married and started having kids, one right after the other. When the kids were small, her mom took care of them and helped with the housework while Joyce worked. She had saved all her money while I was in college so we could have a down payment on the farm. What had she ever really done for herself? We got married, had the kids, and after that, everything revolved around them. The big vacations? Myrtle Beach, Disney World, Gatlinburg. She never went out with friends. She never took time for herself. It was all about the kids, the house, church, me, her parents, my parents, the kitchen bulletin board, and keeping the family in order. Then Kevin Melrose shows up. He's attentive, he's kind, and he's very clever. She still wouldn't look at me. I'm sorry. Yeah, I know. You're sorry. You're one sorry wife. That got me eye contact. No. I mean, I'm sorry for allowing things to progress like this. I'm sorry I let him get to me. I love you, Harry. She looked scared. She realized she had gone too far, and she saw when he came again the next Saturday. And the next time too. Yes. And every time it got a little more. Yes, but I didn't. Until yesterday when I caught you. Oh, Harry, I'm so sorry. I didn't. It didn't. Oh, I wish. I cut in. I know. You just want things back to how they were. That can't happen. You broke the trust. You broke the promise. She looked surprised. I added, straying from our commitment, staying loyal to each other in body and spirit. That's gone now. But I didn't do anything. Only because I caught you first. What we had is over. We'll talk to the kids later. I still love you. I don't think I want a divorce, not right now, but I think you should leave. Move in with your mother. She could use your help. Maybe you and she can talk. I think you need that. As for me, I'll stay here. I'll take care of the house. I'll take care of the kids. They're older now anyway. Maybe in time. Who knows? I knew, or thought I did. She frowned. Tears welled up in her eyes. Harry, can't we? I'm not leaving you. We'll stay married. I'll keep you on my insurance. We won't touch our bank accounts, our insurances, or our cars. Oh, please, can't I just stay home? I promise I'll. You'll what? Behave? Not think about straying? I don't believe you. Damn it, Joyce. In my whole life, I've never once thought about doing what you did, or almost did. Oh, sure, I've looked, but I've always told you. Usually I look to see what somebody is wearing so I can buy it for you. And these things, other than the kids, these things you talk about, they've been a part of who we are. Jesus, Joyce, is there anything here that we didn't discuss first and then agree on together? I got up and walked her to the kitchen window. Look out there. What do you see? Our backyard. Look again, darn it. I pointed to the gazebo. You said we had to have that. You complained and groaned for weeks until I agreed to build it for you. And how many times have we used it? Tell me how many times. It's just a thing, but it's a thing you had to have. You wanted it. I built it for you. She was holding on to me like I was some kind of life preserver. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it about the things. And about your hands that day. If I hadn't dropped that board, you wouldn't have injured your thumb. I held her in my arms. The darn thumb still ached from time to time. I know. That's why I think you need some time away. You need to talk to your mom. Think about who you are, what you want, really want. I want you, Harry. Please don't make me leave. I pushed her back slightly and held her at the elbows. When the kids get home, we'll tell them you're taking some time away. You'll be with your mom and dad. You can talk. They'll listen. They'll understand. You pay attention. You can get your head straight. If you decide you want to move on. I'm sure the kids will support you. I don't want to move on. You'll move out for a while anyway. Can I come back for visits? Of course, your children are here. Then she added another dynamic. What about Mr. Melrose? Are you going to tell his wife? First, it angered me that she brought him up, but it pleased me she stopped using his first name. I said, no, we're both going to tell her. Harry, she said, I don't think. I cut in. You don't think you can tell her? Not alone anyway. Like I said, we'll go together. We'll look at it as our first step on the road back. Besides, she has a right to know. I've got a feeling Mr. Melrose might fancy himself as something of a player. She needs to know. The kids came home a little later. The first thing Joyce did was to jump on them about church. How did they handle things at church with me not there? Claire responded first, Mrs. Bascom did your part in the offering. But she's an alto, said Joyce. Mrs. Bascom changed the song. She sang in the garden. Chad injected. Sounded good too, Mom, you'd have liked it. Oh, murmured Joyce, but what about the scriptural reading? It was a difficult one. Junior replied, no problem, Haven Caudry did it. Joyce muttered, oh yeah, he has a good deep voice. Did they find someone for my Sunday school? The kids had to read the Song of Deborah. Claire grinned, I did it. My wife nodded, oh, how nice. You got it right? Sure, Mom, no problem, was Claire's happy answer. I smiled at my wife like a finger in a glass of water. She said very softly, yes. I suppose she didn't seem happy or convinced. Then we told the kids what we planned. I told them. Joyce stood at the sink and stared out the window. I was pleasantly surprised all three thought it was a good idea. Claire seemed the most relieved. She said she'd need her mom at home a lot. How did she say it with the women things, dance dresses, dances and such? Chad was a little heartless. You can think about what you could have done to the family. Joyce didn't say anything. Maybe Junior said it best, it beats divorce or a real separation. Grandma can use the help, Mom can get her head on straight, and we can start taking more responsibility for what we do around here. Joyce looked scared when he said what he did about responsibility, but that got me thinking. I said, Junior's right. You handle everything around here. Maybe you felt a little overwhelmed. Let's let the kids grow up a little. It'll give you a break. That made her tense up even more. Who'll fix breakfast? Get you all up. Claire, you know how you hate to get up. What about dinner? The laundry who'll do your laundry? Junior, you know how you or someone's got to clean up after you. My calendar. I interrupted. Joyce, stop it. We'll manage. She put her hands to her mouth. I could take time off. Joyce, I said, this could be permanent. An almost apoplectic Joyce responded, no. Well, no, I'll get my hours changed. I could go in at 9 instead of 8. I'll go to 4 days a week. I'll take off all day Monday every week to clean and do all the laundry. I'll plan meals ahead. You'll see. Oh, Harry, you need. Joyce, you're moving out. Then I relented. Maybe if you change your schedule. Claire cut in. Dad, we can't just. Chad cut in on Claire. Mom's got a point. Junior was staring at me. I said to Joyce, you're not going to Devil's Island. I admit, you do a lot around here. We'll play things by ear. I didn't think I'd caved, but I think I might have caved. Joyce's demeanor changed. I'll be so good, Harry, you'll see. You'll see. I grunted, yeah, we'll see. Later that evening, Joyce and I paid the Melroses a visit. At first, Mr. Melrose seemed to wilt. He looked bewildered, but he stiffened. He said we were confusing friendship with something else. He even said we didn't have any proof. I watched Joyce as she watched him lie. His wife looked really upset. I wondered if she'd been through something like this before. If she had, that was her problem. On the way home, Joyce said, I was surprised by what he said. I asked, what do you mean? He lied to his wife. He was trying to take advantage of me. I see that now. Yeah, you could say that. She pressed her head against my shoulder. Oh, Harry, I'm so silly. I love you, Harry. I love you so much. Can't we? I said, we'll see. Late that night, Joyce and I talked some more. She called her mom. She said her mom was glad for the help. I knew her dad wasn't doing that well. This might be a chance for Joyce to not only make up for her mistakes with me and her children, but maybe to do some good for her parents. We went to bed together again that night. I told her she needed to use this time to get out and away more. Maybe she could cut back a little on the church. Maybe she could find a night or two when she could go out with some of her girlfriends at work. I even suggested she try going out on a date or two. That scared her. She said she could never do that. She even asked me if I was planning on something like that. I told her no. She said she'd try going out with some of her work friends, but only casually just to get away. I told her I thought she should. I didn't know, maybe things would work out. Epilogue, it's been months since all that happened. Wouldn't you know it, things did pretty much work out. Joyce cut back at church. She dropped the worship committee and teaching Sunday school. She did stay in the choir. I got back to going every Sunday. Her work, her bosses did let her go in later. They gave her Mondays off, and they didn't even cut her pay. Something else they did was let her take work home. Her colleagues do quite a bit of real estate, and there are always releases that seem to get backed up. They let her do them at home. Joyce, since she had a desktop at home, used that as a way to be home a couple more nights a week. Clever girl. I thought Thanksgiving would be a little tense, but Joyce was at her best. Thanksgiving dinner was the best it had been in years. Her parents joined us. Her dad seemed to perk up with his daughter around him more. The kids were great. They were quick to forgive, quicker than me. Joyce had changed some things about herself too. Her hair was in a ponytail that set off her long neck. She wore a real pretty yellow blouse with a matching pair of dark brown slacks. It all went well with her brown hair and brown eyes. Most important, she wasn't so bossy. She listened more than she talked. She was a little sheepish even. I liked it. Christmas was good too. We cut back on the gifts, had a smaller tree, still a bald one though. That's a tradition I'm glad we kept. I'd taken my wedding ring off right after she moved out. That hurt her. I'd wanted it to. I had it back on Christmas Day. She was quieter than ever. Her dad noticed the ring right away. He's still struggling with the limp and his speech, but his attitude's 100% better. A daughter can do that. After we all ate, Claire and Joyce's mom cleaned up. Chad and Junior left. Joyce's dad went to sleep in my lazy boy. Joyce and I snuggled on the sofa. She fell asleep with my arms around her. It felt good. The Melroses disappeared. I heard they'd changed churches. We never did get divorced, but things did change. Joyce moved back home after New Year's, but she still keeps some of her things at her parents'. Every so often she slips away and spends time with them. It's like a release for when she thinks things are closing in. She said she tried going out with her girlfriends a couple times, but she told me it didn't work. She always felt self-conscious. She told me they cussed a lot, drank too much, and kept inviting strange men over to their table. I admit the men thing made me jealous. I suggested we could set aside one night a week when we'd go out, just us two. I read up a little too. Maybe I had been a little too absorbed in other things. Now, every day I make a point of telling her how much I love her. I buy her flowers and such every week or so. At night, I always greet her with a hug, sometimes a little pat on the backside. She won't admit it. I know she really likes the pat, probably makes her feel attractive. I've cut back at school and work too. I spend more time at home. Will we ever get back to the way things used to be? I doubt it. Right now, I wouldn't even want to. There's a lot more affection now. She lost a little weight and looks really good. I started buying her nightgowns again. She gets embarrassed. She was like that when we first got married. I'm more careful with my appearance, and I try to remember to do things like putting the toilet seat down and cleaning up after myself. There have been other changes too. The kitchen calendar with all the listed events and chores came down. If one of the kids can't remember when they've got something to do well, it's their responsibility. Joyce always liked to read. I've picked up a couple of her novels and read them. One or two weren't so bad. Joyce started watching sports with me. I know she dislikes it, but I'll let her give it a try. The one thing I thought would never heal was the trust thing. For a long time, I was always wondering if I could ever trust her again. It got so bad I realized I'd either have to give that burden up or give up my wife. I decided to let go of the trust thing. I try not to dwell on it. If she's going to do something, there's nothing I'll ever be able to say or do to change her mind. Do I still have doubts? I wouldn't be human if I didn't, but it'll be what it'll be. Right now we're in bed together. She's asleep. I hear her gentle breathing. It was a pleasant evening, nothing extraordinary, one enjoyable time for each of us. Traditional, plain, sure, but we keep a nightlight on and we get to gaze at each other that way. For a few minutes, it's cheek to cheek, lips to lips, eye to eye to eye, two bodies, two lives, one unity, inseparable, then we're done. We turn over and embrace and cuddle and lie close until it's time to go to sleep. We've come to realize marriage is a two-way street, giving and receiving, for better and for worse. Joyce and I, we almost lost it, but I think we'll be okay now. Life's too short, a good love's hard to find, we have to make the most of what we've got, so right now I'll just say good night.